September 2020, you contemplated taking your life.
Yeah.
Walk me through the moment of clarity that shifted it all.
Yeah. So the moment for me was, I think that the most important moment was I was driving through Idaho. I was going back to Montana. I'd been living in California for years. I'd had to move back to Montana a few months before in June, and I'm driving through Idaho and I'm having this contemplation about like, what's the point of me living? Like, I really felt like I had hit like the end of my path and I felt like giving up. And I've been having these thoughts a lot, but they weren't clear thoughts of like, I'm going to kill myself. It was just like, what's the point? Like, I feel really hopeless. Like, this is all just kind of like, it just didn't work out, you know? And then there was like this clear moment of like, you should just end your life. Like, you should just end it. And I really was like in it for a minute. And I was like, I'm going to go as deep as I can into this feeling. Like, and it wasn't like a conscious, like, I need to like understand this. It was like, all right, so how do I do it? Like, where am I going to do this at? So I just contemplated the whole thing and how I would do it. And I remember feeling very selfish. Like, this is really selfish. And I felt guilty about it. But that wasn't enough to make me like stop thinking about it. And I had a moment of clarity. I was like, well, like, what if I don't kill myself? Like, what could happen? And I really didn't have any clarity or hope of like, things are going to get better. There wasn't like, if I don't kill myself, like, it could get better. Like, that was not the thought. Thought was just like guilt. It was like, if I kill myself, I'm going to feel really guilty. It's a waste.
What do you mean by going deeper into it?
Yeah. I like started to map out like, where would I kill myself? How would I kill myself? Like,
the steps of actually following through with it.
Yeah. Like actually thinking through, like planning it, you know, like how do you actually do it? Like, because in my head, I was kind of like, all right, you're talking a big talk right now, but like, are you going to do it? And, that part's hard, you know, is like, are you going to actually pull the trigger? You know, are you going to actually do the thing? And that, for me, that thought was like, I don't really want to die. Like, do I want to die? I don't know. Like, what's that feeling like? What's that last half a second feel like, you know? And I think the thing that got me the most about it was like, I knew that I was feeling this. I was like, there's got to be a reason that you're feeling this way. Like, there's got to be like, I didn't have hope that like, oh, it's going to get better. I was like, there's got to be a reason that you're feeling this low point, and there's got to be a way that like you can get out of it. Like, there's got to be a way that like this means something. Like, your life isn't supposed to just end with like this story. Like, this isn't the story that you signed up for. It's not why you came to Earth. It's not why you exist, is to go out this way. But I just didn't have any hope.
What did shifting that story internally look like?
So on this drive mind you, I'm on the road for hours. So on this drive, I started going through like every reason why I shouldn't kill myself. And there was the guilty part about like, I don't want to like, you know, my family with this, I don't want my family to deal with this. That was a big piece of it. And I remember even thinking to myself, like, okay, once my parents are gone, then I can kill myself. That was even a thought. It was like, I'll just, you know, it was like,
then it wasn't a selfish thing?
Then it wasn't selfish. Like, they're not going to know. So like, it does, you know, like, okay, so I'll live another 20 years. Like, I was literally having these thoughts, you know, and I was like, and then in my head, I'm like, that's so fucked. Like, that you're, you know, thinking this way. But that's where my head was at. I was like, all right, well, I'll just live a little bit longer because I don't want to bum my parents out, you know? I'm like, well, that's no way to live. So I'm like having this conversation with myself. And I remember thinking like, am I in psychosis right now? Like, what's going on? Like, I'm having this very real conversation with myself. And I was like, all right, well, let's make a list of all the reasons why I shouldn't kill myself. And ex-girlfriends were coming up, like, you know, like maybe so-and-so will come back into my life. Like, that could be cool. Like, maybe this will happen. That would be cool. Maybe I'll get a great job, or maybe like one day I'll have kids and I'll, you know, be glad that I didn't. And nothing really like was a shining moment of clarity where I was like, oh, that's a reason to not kill yourself. None of that really seemed to do the trick. But I did land on something that was really important. And it was the fact that my mom had twin boys after me. So I was 2 years old My mom had twin boys. For context, my mom and my dad were never together. They were like in a committed relationship before I was born. And so their relationship was, tough. They had a kind of a tough relationship, and I wasn't a planned baby. I wasn't a planned pregnancy, and they tried to make it work after I was born. Mind you, I was born with a heart condition, so I had open heart surgery 3 months after I was born. So there was a lot of stress in my family. It wasn't a planned pregnancy, and then I was a sick baby. And so 2 years later, my mom's having twins, and they were born prematurely, and they died after being born. And that, from my perspective, that split my family up forever. That was really like, I don't think there was any coming back from that. The choice, I think, one, it was like, how my parents grieved was, I think, different. I don't think that there was really ever a point that they could come back together after that. Even if they tried and therapy and all this stuff, like there was no coming back. And as I'm driving, there's a moment that came to me that was like, I had twin brothers that were born. There's a 1 in 400 trillion, chance that you're born. Just that's like winning the lottery in itself. And I had 2 brothers. I was like, what would life be like if I had brothers right now? Like, would I be driving home and being like, yeah, I'm going to kill myself? Or would I be like, all right, boys, this has been a really tough run. I'm coming home. Like, let's figure this shit out and like, let's get back on track. And that idea for me of like having brothers and like coming home and like feeling like there's a reason to keep going because I had brothers somehow was like this shining moment of hope to me. And I was like, man, I wish I had brothers.
Do you think that's the reason community is so important to you?
I think part of it now. Yeah, I think it's part of it now. Not being alone. But the interesting thing was on that drive, the feeling the brothers part was like, I had brothers that didn't get the shot at life. And then I did get the shot at life. And despite the heart conditions, despite all of the crazy things I did in my 20s, like I'm really this really lucky person. And I was like, man, like if I kill myself and in the afterlife, I meet these, brothers, they're probably gonna be like, the fuck are you thinking, man? Like you got the shot at life. Like, what are you doing? Threw this away. Like you had it all. And that for me was like the click. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to do this. Like if anything, I'm going to do it. It wasn't for my parents. It wasn't for any other reason. It wasn't for myself at the time. It was like, I don't want to go to the afterlife and meet these 2 people that were born, didn't get a chance at life. And they were like, you threw it away right when it was getting interesting.
When we didn't even have a chance.
Yeah, we didn't have a chance. And that for some reason, that was the thing that made me be like, okay, dig in. It's time to dig in. And it was like a mental turn for me. And I didn't get mentally strong after that. It was like, I was still wanted to kill myself, but I was like, I can't, I have to dig in.
You made the
now.
decision in that moment not to, but the mental toughness and resiliency didn't come till later on.
For sure.
What was going through your head that led to you having those thoughts in the first place?
Yeah. So it was a series of things. The quick version is I had been working in the alcohol industry for years, and I had been consuming a ton of alcohol, and I had dried out about 6 months before. So I had quit drinking, and quitting drinking revealed that I had been masking a ton of stuff in my life. And I probably had some undiagnosed mental health issues or at least some chemical swings that were like really, really challenging. And I had been able to mask it with alcohol. Alcohol was a way for me to stabilize because it's predictable. If I'm getting, inebriated, I can consistently kind of control the dopamine cycle. And I think that drying out was a whole new territory for me of feelings that I had never addressed before. And that was, I think, the biggest thing. The second thing was I was basically bankrupt. I was massively in debt. I had co-founded a small business with my girlfriend at the time. The business was not going well. I was really broke. Like she had loaned me money to pay rent. And I mean, it was just like a series of things. So I felt very incapable. I had no money. I had to move out of my place because I was months behind on rent. There was no way money was coming in. I was just really felt as if my entire 20s, I'd worked so hard in my 20s. I mean, I worked really, really hard. I had nothing to show for it. And I was like, this was a waste of my life. Like my life has meant nothing.
Because you spent it all on alcohol?
I think it's just because like I had spent it chasing a good time, you know, and like my life, I'd done amazing things. I'd done awesome parties. I've thrown crazy parties. I've done Playboy parties. I've toured with tons of musicians. I've been, 12 US tours, like all this stuff. And I don't know anyone that I've like really positively impacted their life. People would be like, oh, I love partying with that guy. That guy's so much fun. That guy's a blast. But I don't like actually done anything for the world or for anyone, or even myself, really.
From the outside looking in, the external shows that this guy has it all. He's on tour with these big name musicians,
totally
managing these people, throwing parties, getting to hang out with celebrities. But on the inside, there was nothing there.
Yeah, I'm living like an adjacent to the rock star life. Like I'm on the tour bus. Like I'm on the road. I'm going into the parties. I'm going into the after parties. I'm living the life for sure. And inside, I'm just like totally not fulfilled.
I had a similar experience with alcohol too. Because I've gone in swings where I've drank and not drank. And when I stopped drinking for the first time, things got much worse before they got better.
Yeah.
And that is the worst, because you're like, I'm doing something healthy for
Right.
me that is supposed to be driving me towards a better future.
Yeah.
But I actually feel worse in the moment because everything that I was pushing out of the way is now being revealed and there's nothing to hide behind. But I'm very similar to you in the sense that I could control how I felt when I was fucked up.
Right. And you and I are very similar in this, like people that are high functioning when inebriated, like there's like not that many people that can keep it together, I think. And I could consistently drink and like still perform, still show up to work, be creative, execute.
Non-stop, yeah.
And like, honestly, just be a machine. And it was great. And like, I also thought that like I was succeeding being in that mental state, like because like the signals are there. You're hanging out with celebrities and you're throwing cool parties and you're doing, stuff that like young me thought was important. But when I dried out, it was kind of like, dude, all of that like didn't really do anything for you. Like it was just a moment in time and like no one cares. They're still chasing the next party. So if you're not at the next party, no one really remembers you. No one cares. And that was like, whoa, like I invested all this time and energy and did all these things and they were sick parties, but like no one's going back like, dude, remember that one time back in, like no one cares. They're looking for the next party.
Yeah. Or if they do remember the one time, I forget where I heard this recently, but I think I heard someone say that if you have drinking stories that are either after your 20s or before 65, no one gives a shit because they're not healthy in any way.
Yeah.
But if you have a drinking, like one of your craziest drinking stories is after 65, it's completely unheard of. Or like everyone has something from their 20s. And
right.
You end up living in this kind of equilibrium, but it's the people who don't end up finding that next piece to work towards that then things don't ever end up shifting for them.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Do you think you'll ever go back to drinking at any point?
Yeah, I mean, I think like, I think there's a time to celebrate, like, and this is speaking from a person who I don't view myself as an addict. I don't view myself as an alcoholic. And the reason why I don't view myself that way is because I've been able to turn it off when I choose to. So I think that separates me from people who don't have the ability to turn it off. If you don't have the ability to turn it off, don't do it. And also don't lie to yourself and say, oh, I can turn it off anytime, and then slip back into this unhealthy lifestyle that's going to destroy you. I also was the same way with nicotine. Like I love to chew. I don't chew anymore. For my entire 20s, I would chew for 3 months at a time and then I would just stop. I'd be like, oh, I gotta stop. And I love it.
Could you turn off drinking while you were drinking too? Could you go have like a couple drinks and turn it off, or was it all in or not?
It was all in or not. Yeah. It was all in, but I get the next day I could wake up and be like, I'm not doing that again. And and then I could stop. I could stop at any point in time. I did it in college. And then there's a lot of friends that will like attest to this in college. I wouldn't go out on New Year's. Like for some reason, New Year, like getting drunk on New Year's Eve really bothered me. Even when I was like 22, 23, 24, I hated it. I'm like, you're starting your New Year like hungover. I couldn't wrap my head around that idea. So I would always be the DD for New Year's. And my friends would be like, come out. I'm like, nah, I don't want to go out. Like, I don't want to do it. Like I would always drink on my terms. And I would go to 100. I'd always like push it to 100. It was never like, oh, we're gonna have a couple beers. It'd be like, we're gonna get inebriated. We're gonna get fucked up.
So following this pivot where you had that drive, you thought of your brothers, and that was the piece that really pulled you back. You said the mental resiliency didn't come next, but you knew that you were you were destined for something more and you needed to go on a path that was steering you towards something else.
Yeah.
Walk me through that thought process. Where did you begin, or where did you even think to begin?
Well, on that drive, the idea that you had brothers, they didn't get a shot at life. If you meet them in the afterlife, you want them to be so proud of you and be like, that was our brother. That was motivation to me. It was like, okay, I'm not going to kill myself. I'm making the commitment right now that no matter how hard this gets, how crazy this gets, I'm not going to give up for my brothers. That was like the motivation for me. And there was for me at the time, I think it was just a way to like make it all make sense. And it was the shining light of hope. And I was like, okay, cool. I'm locked in. Like now I have to be committed to life.
There's no out.
There's no way out. Even if it gets crazy, even if the next 40 years are just ridiculously hard and I'm just an old man, and I'll look back and be like, all right, at least I tried, you know? And there was like, in that moment, there was a mental shift, and I was like, I have to get healthy. I have to get healthy because I knew I was so unhealthy right now. My mental frameworks were unhealthy. I was a victim. Everything was just like hopeless. And so I realized I needed to get like my nutrition dialed in. I was like, I don't think I'm eating right. I hated the way I looked. I felt physically weak. I was skinny. I felt weak, incapable. And that was mirrored in my financial situation, my relationship, like me having to move back in with my parents at 31, you know, like I felt like a child, honestly. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to get strong. That was the first thing. And I knew that in order to get strong, you need to have a healthy gut. You need to, and I have the blessing of like growing up with like asymmetrical knowledge about nutrition. My family is above average in their education on health and wellness, nutrition. My family gardened. I grew up working in a natural food store. I worked with holistic practitioners and chefs that would like cook food for people with celiacs. Like this is like in 2015, I'm like working in a cooking school and I'm being introduced to people with all of these food intolerances. So I'm sorry, I was 15. It was like 2005. So I was young. This is before like the gluten-free movement's even happening. So I had early exposure to this stuff, and I had like a lot of knowledge about health and wellness. And I knew like, okay, I need to reduce all the inflammatory foods in my body, and I need to like get like really a clean diet, and I need to get strong. And that's what I did. I pivoted hard into just like same food every single day, same meal every single day.
What were you eating?
I was basically eating eggs, beef, and I was eating wheat for a while, and then I quit eating wheat because I was like, I didn't want anything inflammatory. So doing like rice noodles, beef, eggs, same thing every day.
The occasional corn dog.
Yeah, no corn dogs on that trip, but I still love me a good corn dog from time to time. And then I was doing like greens, like I was doing like a ton of greens, tons of probiotics, fermented foods every single day, like tons of fermented foods, because I knew the gut biome had probably been destroyed from years of drinking. And I was like, I need to get a healthy gut so I can like, because that's a big part of like your mental health is your healthy gut.
Which is crazy that you were thinking of this 10, 15 years ago before it was popularized the way that it is now. And the way that you approached getting yourself and your mindset right was through the internal gut-brain axis.
Yeah, it's crazy because like I knew, I kind of I sort of like intuitively knew that, like from these experiences and like from this education I'd had and just osmosis. And then I was like, okay, I have to put together basically my own protocol. I was like, I got to put together my own protocol and like get this figured out. And it was really like gut health was the first thing, and then getting physically strong. And I knew I can't get physically strong. I can't gain weight if my gut's not healthy. And I knew that I would feel better about myself if I had some muscle on my body.
Taking a break from this episode to remind you that your inputs matter. This show was created to help you build a high-performing, healthy, wealthy life. And if you feel that you're getting value from this episode, please go ahead and share it with someone who you feel would benefit as well. Now, fun fact, over 90% of our listenership is not actually subscribed to the show, so it would mean the world to me if you went ahead and tapped that subscribe button. Thank you for being here. Now back to the show. Was there anything that you did back then that we now know to be wrong present day? Was all in alignment with so it's more of you learned by experiencing. You learned by doing the physical thing. And because you were able to listen to yourself in that moment, you were able to say, I know that these foods and these pieces, dietary pieces for me, are actually improving my body and decreasing inflammation.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't do any like blood panel testing, so it's anecdotal.
Yeah.
Like I don't have like hard evidence of it, but I mean, I think like a big piece of it was the strength gains and like the physical transformation that happened. Like I gained weight. I got the strongest I've ever been in my entire life. And like within 6 months, I was, the before and after is pretty dramatic if you look at me. And then also like the amount of weight I could move, like my physical strength legitimately, increased. Was
this where the first piece of that mental resilience you speak about comes from?
Yeah, I think so. Cold exposure was the mental resilience piece.
Yeah.
So we're going back in time. This is sort of an interesting timeline. So 2019, January 2019, I'm in a motorcycle wreck in Los Angeles. One of my closest friends and I, one of my best friends, Henry and I, are on this crazy day. We're riding motorcycles all through LA. It's been bonkers. And we're like done with the ride and we're cruising down Sawtell, just down the street from you actually. And we're not even going fast. It's like not a big deal. End of the night. And someone turns and hits my friend and I'm right behind him and I lock up my brakes trying not to run him over. I go down, I break my hand. His foot got crushed in the wreck. And my life was chaos at the time because I had been working in the alcohol industry, I'd been touring, and been through a breakup. And I was just like, my life was crazy. And
it was like a year prior to that drive.
Yeah. This is like a year and a half prior to the drive. And so I hired a guru named Troy Casey, the certified health nut. And I was like, yo, I need to figure out what's going, like I'm turning 30 and like my life is insane and I can't keep living like this. And so we did breath work for the first time. He got me doing cold showers, doing cold exposure. And I was using it as like a biohack to basically recover from my hangovers because I was closing out Whiskey Row with Dirk Bentley every night. And like, like I'm getting hammered and like having fun and touring and then getting up the next morning and doing breath work and cold showers. And so now fast forward a year and a half later, I'm like, I have to go all in on this cold exposure thing because I think this is the only thing that makes me feel okay. Like this is the thing that like day to day makes me not want to kill myself. And now when I tell the story that cold showers were like, cold exposure was the crutch. The crutch was you do the hard thing in the morning and you feel good enough that you don't want to kill yourself, right? And I did that it was like 3 months that I would like get up and I would dread the day. I'm like, I made this commitment to not kill myself. And that's kind of like my attitude. I'll get through the day, like I'm barely hanging on and I'd take a cold shower. I'm like, all right, I feel better actually. Like I'm good. I'll go work out. I'm like, all right, I'm making progress, But within about 3 months, it started to turn and it was like, all right, I feel pretty good. Like I don't feel as bad. I feel a lot more hope. Like things are getting better. I'm getting stronger. Like life is okay. And then within 6 months, it was like a performance cue. I'd get in the cold water and I'd be like, I'm ready to go. It was like beast mode activated. I'm ready to crush. But the cold exposure was the number one thing for me that allowed me to stabilize like my mental health.
Do you think it was the consistency piece of it? Or was it that you got something hard done before you started your day? Or is it now that the science that we have where cold water actually releases dopamine equivalent to that of doing cocaine, but for a prolonged period of time?
I would say like there's the biochemical piece that's happening. I don't think I was super aware. I wasn't aware that that's what was happening at the time. The consistency, I don't think I would have gotten the benefit that I did had I not committed to it every single day. Like doing it every day, doing the hard thing every day built proof for me, right? And like, I think the body of proof is one of the most powerful things you can have in your life when you're transforming is like, I am becoming this person and I have proof because I've got 10 days behind me of doing it. I've got 30 days, I've got 60 days, I've got 90 days behind me that this is who I am now. So I think the consistency piece is like building the body of proof that you are becoming who you say you're becoming. And it's congruent. Your actions are matching it, right? And I really struggled with congruence. I had a coach at the time I was working with. I really struggled with congruence. I would say one thing, but I would do another thing. My actions wouldn't match up with my words. And that was terrible in my personal relationship, and it was terrible in what I said who I wanted to become. And then I would do these self-sabotaging things that would completely distract me or completely derail me. And so when I was doing cold showers every day, it's like, okay, that's the one thing that is consistent. I'm a guy who does cold showers. I do hard shit in the mornings. And my friends, and mind you, this is in Montana. in the fall. So the water temperature is 52 degrees coming out. Like we can measure it's 52 degrees. So it's cold. It's not the coldest cold plunge in the world, but it's enough to shock you and it sucks. And I'm like, I have this body of proof that like I'm this guy now. And then I started jumping in the river. Like when it started freezing, like when the snow came, then I started jumping in the river. And I remember the first time I jumped in the freezing river, I was like, I'm going to die. Like I thought, like, there's a chance I'm going to die. And this is the funny parallel that I have now. Like now I do things that scare me. I've always done things that scare me. I've always done things that like, I'm like, this could kill me. I've always been like that. I've never had that like, I have to avoid this thing that might hurt me. I remember thinking like this, I'm like, how ironic would it be if I die doing this thing that I think is like saving my life, right? I remember having that thought and I jumped in and I was like, wow, this is awesome. And I was like, that was a new benchmark of like, I am this guy. I jump into freezing cold rivers. I jump into cold lakes. I take cold showers. I work out hard. I'm not that old guy anymore.
What did it look like? So on the touring music side, community, in both sides of your life, community is a big piece. Mm-hmm. On that side, it wasn't necessarily a healthy community, and mm-hmm. you're aligning with people who, again, it's the next party or the next thing. It's not actually the depth of connection that you have in the moment. When you stop drinking, you stop partying, your friend group changes dramatically.
Oh, dude, completely shifted.
How did you navigate that, knowing that community is a very strong and important piece to you, but you're leaving one behind and having to figure out who is the next and who is the new?
I mean, I don't think I even really knew that community was important to me, to be honest. Like, I don't think I was conscious of it, to be frank with you. I don't think I was even conscious that like community, like building community was a superpower of mine. And I didn't realize that. Like, I thought I was a good connector of people because I genuinely want people to win, and I don't have to get any value out of it. Like, I don't need to get anything out of connecting my friends or connecting people to feel like it was worth it for me to do the effort. Like, I'm just down to do it. And I was, I'm back in Montana while I'm getting healthy and I'm healing up, and I only had a couple friends. Like, I hung out with like 2 people. Like, I literally hung out with 2 people, and we just kind of did everything together. We worked out together, and that was it. And I remember feeling like at the time I was okay being very reclusive. When I came back to Los Angeles in 2021, so like it'd been basically a full year, I came back to LA, and I remember thinking like, I don't want to see the same people. Like there's some friends from before that had also started, like they'd really respected what I'd done. They'd stay in touch and they were very supportive of me. And those people, I'm like, I'm cool with them seeing in my life. But overall, I don't want to go back and get back in the mix. I don't want to go back to the same old bars and see bar managers or promoters, or I just don't want to do that stuff again. So I started going to Erewhon. I started booking meetings at Erewhon. And I was like, I'm going to make Erewhon my third place. And that was like a very conscious decision of like, I need a third place where people see me and they associate me with that place, and it's going to be Erewhon.
And the first 2 were?
The first two what?
Said you associate with the third place.
Oh, the third. Oh, well, so the idea of the third place is like you have your home and you have your work.
I see.
And then the third place is like where you go when you're not at home or at work.
Got it.
And that third place for most people is like, the bar that they go to, or like their maybe a coffee shop where you hang out. And I was like, Erewhon is to be that third place. But like, you see me there a lot, and you can find me there.
Yeah, and now you're hosting events at Erewhon too.
And then ironic, like the joke sort of like became like like you can find me at Erewhon. I'm the unelected mayor of Erewhon.
Talk to me a little bit about your belief in around the art of mastery. And I know we spoke about this earlier today, but where doing hard things can become a crutch, and where you need to figure out the different seasons of your life where, yes, I need to go to war in this moment, mm-hmm. or this is the moment where I need to pivot and allow a little bit more free flow and less structure into my life.
Yeah.
Where does that belief and where does that ability to move from one to the next and feel that out come from?
I'm still figuring it out for sure, but I think there's a couple things I've learned. One of those things is, and these are things I've learned about myself, and hopefully other people can apply it in their life. The thing for me is I really benefit from having a going to war mindset. Like, I like that mindset. I like being in the no excuses, winner takes all mindset of like, I'm doing this thing. Expect me to be very intense about it. Expect me to be all in about it. Expect me to be unreasonable with my desire for it to work, right? Like, I like that mindset, and I give myself full permission to be in that mindset. And I don't really care if people don't agree with it or don't align with it. Like, I don't care. Like, I'm going to do this thing because I have to do this thing for me. That's like one side. The other side is like, I need to be creative. I need to flow. I need to like be in just an energy that's like not at war and is like very much at peace and very present. And I don't think that they're like, synergistic vibes at all. And I haven't been able to figure out how to marry them up and like have balance there. And I don't think I need to. I think it's a duality to me. And that's like, those are the modes I'm going to operate in. I'm going to go a little out of balance. I'm going to be very intense. I'm going to conquer this thing that I'm after. And then I'm going to enter a flow and I'm going to vibe and I'm going to be more chill and present with my family. And that's just like probably how I'm going to live my life. I'm figuring out what that looks like, but I don't think they're going to happen simultaneously. Like, I don't think it's like a Monday I do this, Tuesday I do that. Like, I don't think that's how my life works. In terms of the mastery piece though, I've learned that everything you do, every input you do can become a crutch if it defines your success or defines like your performance. So if you get into this mindset of like, oh, I can't perform because I didn't do my breath work, or oh, I can't perform because I didn't do my cold plunge today. Like we were talking about this earlier. It leads into potentially can lead into a guilt or a shame cycle of like, oh, I let myself down again. I can't do it. Depends on what stage of performance you're at or what stage of execution you're at in your life. But if you're trying to accomplish something, it's probably good that you're super intense about your stuff and super regimented, and that you take no excuses, and that you map out your day and you just do the thing, boom, 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 right? Because those are all cues, performance cues, that are building that body of proof that you are who you say you are. You're very congruent and you're executing. But you can't probably do that forever. And some people can. And there's Mark Wahlberg's, there's Tony Robbins. There are people that are like super intense, and I love that for them. I'm not, so far, I haven't seen myself be that guy. When I've tried, I need to like downshift at certain times.
Or you see the front-facing perspective that they put on. You don't actually know what goes on behind the scenes where they do have the downtime.
I've never lived with them for a year, right? So I don't know. And by the way, if they can do that every day and that works for them, great. That's awesome. For me, what I find is if I create this like this mindset of, oh, I have to do this thing or else I'm not who I say I am, that creates a shame cycle for me where I'm now operating to not let myself down, not because I'm in power and in control of who I want to be. So it's way more powerful for me to give myself a little room to like, let's see what happens. And then trust that like, if I notice myself being a little bitch, I'm going to do the hard thing. That's like way more powerful to me. That's like mastery to me. Is like, you're now taking these modalities that turn into performance cues, whether that be cold exposure, working out, breath work, meditation, journaling, whatever the things are. Those are all modalities that are performance cues that help you become more optimized. And then you figure out like how you need to use them into your life. How do you place them in your life? When do you implement them? And use those as cues to perform better or optimize.
How do you know which season of life you're in?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think you have to decide. It's a choice more than anything. It's two things. It's awareness of what you want, and recognizing like what action has to be taken to get what you want. And if you're clear on what you want and you're clear on the actions that need to be taken, then you now have the choice of entering the season of the grind, of doing the thing, of executing, going to war, right?
Yes.
If you're not clear on that, then you probably need to be in a state of flow. You need to explore. You need to be creative. You need to have no objective. The objective is to experience. And then in that process, boom, light bulb will go off. And you're like, oh my God, this is the thing. I have to do this thing. Initiate the, war mode, right?
You create space for the thing that you wouldn't have if you just try and push and grind through everything else.
Totally.
In my life, because I was very similar too. When I worked for Hyatt, I would be out drinking till probably 2 a.m, 3 a.m, and then I'd be back at 8 a.m. to teach a yoga class.
Yeah, right.
And it was just like, how are we doing this kind of thing?
You told me that story before.
Yeah, I was driving myself mad doing it. And I realized that I was trying to balance everything in every day.
Yeah.
And a big shift for me was zooming out, shifting from micro to macro and saying, okay, this is the season of life I'm in from a macro scale right now. And then the other side of it will come at some point. I don't know when it's going to be, but enjoy. Like when I lived in Hermosa, I was in a very like flowy, there wasn't a lot of work on the docket. I had things in the works, but there wasn't like, I had a lot of free time and space. And because of that, I kept telling myself, like, it's not always going to be this way. Enjoy it while you have it. Because then it shifts, and where we're at now, there's a lot more on the docket and a lot more that's going to be coming too.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, I can see where on one hand, I have the time and the space to be creative on this side. On the other side, I know that I'm going to go into a head down grind mode, go to war mode, like you say, at some point here soon too. But when I zoomed out, the things that I stayed consistent on were the things that it was diet within reason, nutrition, or diet, exercise, and sleep. And I recognized that if I set boundaries and kind of structure on those non-negotiables, it doesn't matter what macro stage I'm in, because I'm always showing up and taking a step towards who I want to be, whether I'm actually doing the thing, because you don't always have to do to get more. You can be to get more as well.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree with that.
Do you, in regards to doing versus being, because that's something we've spoke about before too, do you find yourself needing to challenge yourself in the regard of saying, I need to do this to prove to myself I'm capable of this next step? Or have you shifted now to more of I'm accepting who I am presently and being more in the moment?
Yeah, I'm really trying to be more present and just through a state of awareness, recognize like who I am. So a big shift for me was last year so two things happened last year. I was at war last year, and part of that war was my heart surgery. I had two options going into the heart surgery. It was take it easy, prepare your body, get the surgery out of the way, recover, get back to work, right? Or the way I did it, which was like, I'm going to do 11 events in 1 month. I'm going to fly to Montana twice. I'm going to donate my own blood so I get my own blood after the surgery. I'm going to do energy healing in this whole time so I'm mentally and energetically prepared for this heart surgery. I'm going to recover in record speed, and then I'm going to have the craziest year ever with Plunge. And I chose the second one, right? So that was my mentality. And my girlfriend at the time and my family, they were like, please slow down. And I was like, please don't tell me what to do. Like if I die in the surgery, I want to go out like on my terms. My terms are I'm gonna crush up to the surgery. I'm gonna crush immediately after the surgery. So 7 weeks after, 31 days after the surgery, I ran a mile in 10.5 minutes. The first person in my surgeon's career to do that. And then 7 weeks later, I was back in the field producing events for Plunge. I'm doing the thing, building community, and did 48 events last year. On top of that, in the 52 weeks, I did 48 events, and I was out for 7 of those weeks from heart surgery. So basically, more than an event in a week was the pace that I set for myself last year. The volume was insane. I'm the endurance athlete of events. That's like my new thing, right? Like, what's your discipline? Events. That's my discipline.
Do you think you were working so hard prior to the surgery because you didn't know if you were going to make it through?
Yeah, I think I was part of it. And I thought about it a lot, like, is this a way to distract myself from like what's happening? And I was like, no, like I'm in, like I'm all in, like this is who I want to be. And for me, it was that proof of that feeling of like, this is who I am. I push up into the last minute. Yeah. And I liked that feeling. I was confident.
Walk me through the surgery. You had open heart surgery at 31.
Yeah.
From a birth defect that you also had surgery for when you were a child.
Yep. An event. Yeah. Walk
me through waking up and opening your eyes for the first time after the surgery at 31.
33. So I found out about the condition when I was 31. I found out that the valve was, that basically this condition I was born with was basically presenting itself as like, I'm going to have surgery. And I was like, it's coming down the pipeline. I knew it was coming. I had surgery at 33. And that feeling though of waking up the next day is So waking up the next day after the surgery, it was just kind of like, wow, that happened. I didn't process it at all. It was just like, okay, cool. Like you're alive. I remember thinking, God, like, I did a lot of energy healing, a lot of coaching going into this. I did a lot of deep work. And one of the things was like the moment that you wake up and you recognize that you made it through, like your life starts all over again. Like you get to like live this life. And so it was a very freeing feeling. I'm like, okay, cool. I woke up.
So you viewed it as like a fresh start?
Yeah. I was like, this is awesome. Like this is best case scenario. Like now I get to live. Like now I get to like start all over again. It's like that energy is so fucking insane. Like it's incredible, that energy of like, now I get to live.
Yeah.
Like that's insane. You get that every day, but no one taps into it. Like it's insane when you actually tap into that feeling of like, okay, now I get to live. Like right now you get to do that. Every day you get to do that. But it takes a crisis for you to recognize it in most cases.
Do you think everyone needs some type of crisis to build that resilience?
I don't want to say people need it, but it's a very powerful motivator.
It's a moment in time to pinpoint something.
Yeah, it's an inciting incident for sure. And it enables a lot of people to tap into that piece of them for sure.
I knew you before, and then now I know you after. The way that you approach the world has shifted. The way you approach it, how you show up, and just the look in your eye when you meet and greet new people has shifted dramatically. How has your mindset and beliefs shifted post-surgery and how you now approach where you want to move in life?
Yeah, that's so interesting. So it's funny. I did an event this past week in Miami. I got really tired social battery was worn down on Sunday. So it was a multi-day event. The last day, and there's a lot of young kids that have a lot of energy. They got that youthful, like they're there, they're in the moment, they're having fun. I feel like the old man at the party, I'm like, oh gosh. And there was this kid that had talked to me the day before and just chatted me up and had so much energy. And I was able to match him, genuinely. But Sunday I saw him and I remember like ducking. I was like, oh gosh, like I can't match this kid today. I don't have it. And I went around the corner because I was like, I just need a minute to myself. And then I was like, dude, screw that. Like, is this who you are? You're going to show up, you're going to hide from this kid because you don't have the energy. So I turn around and walk over and dab him up. I'm like, what's up, dude? You're going to get in the cold plunge. Like, that's the mindset shift for me is like if I recognize that I want the easy way out, then I have to turn around and do the hard thing. And so I think, your earlier question of like, doing versus being, who I'm being is like, I'm trying to be the person who in the moment I can recognize, like, am I trying to cop out of the thing? Am I trying to like, am I doing this because I want comfort, or am I doing this because I actually need it? Right. And so like doing the hard thing, doing the cold plunge, doing the run that you don't want to do or whatever, doing the journaling, the breath work, just the silence and the stillness. I don't do that because like I need to be disciplined and I need to tell myself like I don't have any I don't validate myself and say, oh, I'm okay because I do these things. It's not about the proof so much now as like recognizing if I want to duck and run, that's the time for me to lean into the thing. And a mindset shift there is like, I trust myself now to catch that moment.
Yes.
I really do. I plan moments of stillness. I've kind of like restructured my whole architecture of life. For the last 6 months, I will go home to Montana. I'll spend a week in Montana before I do a big sprint. So my previous life was like work really hard and then rest and recover. Now I preload the recovery. So I'm taking time to recover, take it easy, be around my family, eat the food that I want to eat, hit the gym, just like kind of mellow out, get super clear, and then I go to war. And then I come home and I don't even see it as recovery. I'm recovering on the road as I go. It's part of my life. It's part of what I do. I come home, I preload that recovery, I ease up, boom, go out and sprint again. Yeah.
That line between work and play is blurred because you're just living your life as you want to now.
I'm having a genuinely good time.
Yeah, we can see it. You met him last week, but Lockie Stewart was here. I had him on the podcast last week too. He said I've known him for almost a decade now, which is absurd. But we probably 2-3 years ago, he said something to me that shifted how I view my own recovery as well. Okay. And for a long time, he said, and both of us were the same way. He said, I needed to earn the right to rest. And so working hard was the baseline. And if I didn't work hard, I couldn't let myself rest. But rest is so much more important than performing, like we spoke about with the Whoop trial, which we can also talk about too. He said, I shifted the belief from I need to earn the right to work hard.
Oh, wow.
So recovery came first. And when I shifted that thought within me, like we were talking about my body, I'm working out really hard right now. I need more sleep. So I'm not having the super early mornings that I would like to. In the past, I would feel guilty for not waking up early. And then I would spend this whole day trying to pull myself back to where I thought I should be. Yeah. But instead, the rest was the piece that came first. And then the working hard came after.
Yeah, that's that whole crutch thing, right? Yeah. It's like the 5 a.m.s are great. And like, I'm not a 5 a.m. guy, and I don't feel guilty about that. Like, do I think that I would get more done if I got up at 5 a.m.? Yeah, I would, for sure.
For a short term.
Yeah, for sure. I also know that like, I'm tired at 5 a.m. and like, I'm not super creative at 5 a.m. My creativity hits later in the day, and I'm down to optimize around that. And like, yes, do the hard thing, of course, but also like, I don't feel guilty that I'm not up at 5 a.m. personally.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that.
But it's the difference between optimizing for short-term intensity and long-term consistency.
For sure.
It sounds like in the past, the short-term consistency was how you approach the music life.
Yeah.
And how you approach the tour life, which it's kind of like the rock star lifestyle. It's show up, go really fucking hard, and then rinse and repeat as many times as you can until you stop.
Right.
I think we're shifting into an era now where health span has come more to the forefront in terms of, rather than how quickly and intensely can I do this thing, it's how long can I do this thing and feel good for. How has your mindset shifted, or how have you shifted how you approach the things that you do in life away from intensity and more towards consistency?
Yeah, this is so interesting because I'm so like obsessed with this whole thing. As I'm learning about it and as I'm implementing it and doing it, I'm realizing like so much of what we're sold and marketed to from the health and wellness space is all about like looking at your stats from yesterday and then adjusting for tomorrow, right? It's all in a 2-day span, right? It's like, this happened yesterday, so do this today. This happened yesterday, do this today. You're doing this today, so you can do this tomorrow, right? And it's not thinking long term. It's not really thinking about like, over the course of time, is this actually like, what is this actually doing for me over the course of time? And we're sort of segmenting like performance around like, oh my gosh, this happened, so I have to do this. If this, then that, right? But we're not necessarily saying, hey, if I do this every day or every week or every month, if I do this thing once a month for the next 10 years, here's what's going to happen to me. Like, I have a friend who does an intention dinner with himself once a month. So once a month, he takes himself out just by himself and eats a really nice steak dinner, like the nicest meal he can find wherever he's at. And he journals and he writes down like what worked for the month, what didn't work, what his intention is for next month. And he does it. He does this thing, and it's great. And then once a year, he takes himself on like basically an intention trip. He goes up to a cabin. He has a lot of stillness. It's just him. He does his thing. And the first year it was cool. Second year it was cool. Third, now it's like a thing that he does. And he has these huge unlocks when he does it because he's been building that consistency. And I think that applies to everything in health and wellness. Like, it's not necessarily about like, oh, I felt stressed, so I did the breath work. It's like, do you even recognize the stress in your body before it's like as it's happening? Are you able to look at your calendar and go, hey, that's probably going to stress me out. Like, hey, this is probably going to overload me. This, whatever I'm signing up for is probably going to like, be a lot of pressure. So can I preload all of these modalities to make my performance better? It's like you were talking about with more sleep and prioritizing the recovery piece so that you can then perform better. My mindset right now is like, how do I live in a way that I'm able to live at this pace for as long as possible? And I'm really interested in how to architect my life around that.
So it's less about relying on a wearable and data and more about listening to your body beforehand. The data is just an ancillary benefit to what your body's already doing.
Yes. And the wearable piece is really interesting because once you've had the wearable for a few months and you've been diligent with it, then you start to recognize like, these are the things, like, for example, if I fly on an airplane across the country, it's going to wipe me out. Like, my recovery, my HRV is going to be way down the next day. So like, and I've been pushing that. I've been trying to exercise after I fly. Like, I fly and I run the same day. Multiple times this year, I've flown to a city and done a run club the same day or within like 12 hours of landing. And it wipes me out. It's hard, right? But I'm doing that hard thing to like see how does my body handle it, right? Because the other option is like, oh, I can't run because I flew, right?
Yes.
So I can't run because I'm not recovered. So there's two mentalities. It's like, I'm going to do this hard thing and see like how my body recovers and then optimize around it. Like, what are the inputs that I can put into my body so that I'm able to fly across the country and then go run? That's one option. The other option is like, well, because I flew, I have to rest.
in regard to inputs, let's double click on that for a second. In regards to inputs specifically around health span and longevity, what are some other things that you do similar to when I fly, I run, when traveling or when optimizing for being able to perform at a higher aptitude for longer?
Contrast therapy is my number one.
Okay.
For sure, my number one. Because of the shown, and this goes back to why I think a wearable is very important, is people like, yes, there's an intuitive piece. It's a yes and, right? Yes, you should absolutely trust your body, listen to your body intuitively eat the thing you need to eat, intuitively get the more rest, right? Of course. But also, why not why not trust the data? If the data says you didn't recover, then don't intuitively go work out as hard as you can, right? Like you can't always trust intuition.
What's your contrast protocol look like?
It changes for sure. It definitely changes. It's not super consistent. What I really like to do is I like to do about a 14-minute sauna session, somewhere in there, 14, 15 minutes, steam room if that's what's available. I basically just look for urgency in the body. So for me, it's like wherever I hit, like with you, I hit it way sooner because you have a ridiculously hot sauna. It's like your sauna just is ridiculous. But I look for that point of urgency, like when do I want to get out? And then I like try to hit that wave 2 or 3 more times. So if I can hit that point of urgency where like heart rate's coming up and I'm like, okay, this really sucks now. After I felt that feeling a couple times, that's probably time to get out. And I usually it's around 14 minutes for me, somewhere in there.
So it's the moment that it gets hard. You breathe through that moment, calm yourself back down, so you're able to regulate your own nervous system, that's when you would then step out.
I would do it. I would try to do it 1 or 2 more times.
Okay.
And like for me, sauna, it hits fast. Like in a 200-degree sauna, like first 6 minutes in, I'm like, okay, this it's hot in here. It's cool. And especially if you're talking, it's harder, right? You're using more energy. 8 minutes, 10 minutes in, you're going to hit that second wave of like, oh my gosh, it's ridiculous, you know? And then 12 minutes in or 14 minutes in, you're like, okay, it's like, I want to get out now. I need to get out. And sometimes I do get out. Sometimes I'm like, I'm going to push another wave. You know, I imagine it's a wave coming. It's like when you're surfing and there's a wave and you're like, this wave's going to kill me, you know, and then you like duck dive and you're like, I'm totally okay. You know, it's the same thing. It's like you do the reset breath. We're fine. And then eventually you get out. Same thing in the cold plunge. I do the same thing. I'm like, I look for that sense of like, okay, I really want to get out. And then I push through it. And then after 3 or 4, and for me, because I plunge so much, it's 3 to 5 minutes. It's usually 3 minutes. I'm fine, you know?
It's really the time when you want to check your watch to see what time you're at.
Totally. And I will always delay it too. I'll be like, no, I'm not going to look. And I'm like, okay, I'll finally look. And then I'm like, it's 3 minutes. Okay. Of course it is. Like it's so programmed into me that like, even if I didn't look, it's accurate, you know?
Is there anything to be said for pushing past that point and going even longer?
1,000%. I think building resilience, there's a guy that I've done some trainings with. His name is Rolk. If you look him up on Instagram, he's an absolute wild man. Rolk does phenomenal resilience training. I've learned a lot from him, but yeah, there's absolutely a benefit to building resilience by pushing through. I think it's a thing that you do in a season. I don't think it's something you need to do every day. Maybe not even every week. Like you should do one hard thing every day. A cold shower is a hard thing. A cold plunge is a hard thing. A sauna session is a hard thing. A run is a hard thing. Like how many hard things do you need to do every single day before you're just like looking for ways to hurt yourself? Like the idea is to like live and optimize yourself and live for a long time. Sauna has been shown to improve longevity, improve health span. So like the amount of time that you're alive and able to do stuff, if you sauna 4 times a week, it's going to improve your longevity. You're going to have a close to a 50% reduction in all-cause mortality. You're going to have a close to 48 or 50% reduction in likelihood of dying from a cardiovascular disease. You're going to have a decrease in neurodegenerative diseases. So like you should be doing the sauna 4 times, 5 times, 6 times a week for sure. Do you need to kill yourself and dehydrate? You know, we were talking about this earlier. Like, do you need to like blast off and like dehydrate yourself every single time? Probably not. Get your heart rate up. Get in that zone 2 cardio. Hit that point of urgency where you're like, this sucks. See if you can go past it a little bit. Get out. You're good. You know, like in general, I think that's the wave.
You have run post-flight, contrast as your number 1.
Contrast is my number 1 recovery modality. Sleep, I mouth tape. I use, I don't mouth tape every night, truthfully. I do a nasal strip most nights when I'm in my routine. I like to do breath work in the morning. I like to do like a short, like just some deep breaths and then some rapid breathing, some nasal breathing, open up the sinuses. But yeah, I mean, honestly, contrast is like my number one.
If we wanted to simplify all of this, everything that you do, and someone was like, I want to install one new thing into my daily routine over the next 6 months that will give me the largest benefit. So one input that gives me the largest outsized return, what would you turn to?
I would do cold exposure. Yeah, cold exposure in the morning. I mean, yeah, probably cold exposure is for me the number one. But another good one is like go for as soon as you wake up, get sunlight in your eyes and go for a 10-minute walk.
Yes.
Like that's also a game changer. And I've done a lot. I've built a ton of morning routines for myself, and I've stuck to them and I've done them. And then when they hit a point where it's like, okay, this is my morning routine and it's great. And then I honestly look for the next routine. I'm like, what's the next thing? And because I don't like this idea of getting stuck in like, oh, I have to do this thing every morning or else. I hate that feeling. Yeah. I like the idea of like, this is my toolkit, and my toolkit has all of these interesting tools that are the perfect thing for the perfect job. And some mornings it's like, it's not doing a cold plunge. It's getting up and just getting sunlight in your eyes and going for a nice walk.
And once it no longer serves you, being able to understand and listen to your body and pivot.
Right. And there's times where like, if you're eating right and sleeping right and you don't have a ton of stress in your schedule, like if you have some days I have meetings and calls, for 6 hours straight, then I'll go run, I'll do an event, I'll do a thing. I've got a lot of stress and demand in my body. I don't eat enough or in the right windows. I don't always control that perfectly. And that's something I'm working on. I don't go back, hey, I need to stress my body more and do like a super hard resilience building cold plunge sauna session. I will use that modality as a way to wake me up and feel good, but I'll do a reduced time and I'm cool with that. And then other times when I have more freedom in my schedule, I'm like, I'm going to get up this morning. I'm going to do a super challenging cold plunge. I'm going to make it be colder. I'm going to, go push past it. I'm going to sit there and do breath work, and I'm going to meditate and journal. And like, I'll do the bigger routine,
When it comes to wearables and tracking data, where do you think the things are headed?
Yeah, it's a really interesting space. I think that wearables are doing a great job of telling you what happened yesterday. I don't think they're doing a good job predicting, where you're headed. I don't think they're doing a good job of visualizing like your progress over time. I think that look at it and you go, okay, like yesterday didn't work out, and it helps you adjust behavior greatly. Like the biggest one for me was my bad habit of eating late really, really interrupts and hurts my recovery. If I eat late, I can't recover. My recovery scores are super low. My HRV drops. It's a bummer. So you see that enough times and like that behavior has to change. So now I have to eat earlier. So it's amazing for that. But it doesn't do a good job of being like, okay, like over time, how is my HRV improving? How are my other behaviors improving my overall health or my health span? Like what's leading us towards health span? We don't have a lot of insights there yet. So
I love that.
Probably health span.
Health span is the pivot towards what you think is coming next?
I think so.
Let's pivot gears a little bit. I want to talk more on community building because you've been able to, in a very short amount of time, grow an extremely strong community in California, and I think have exposed most of Southern California to cold water therapy over the span of the last year. But I want you to talk specifically, on community building, but from the lens of business and building a brand.
Love that.
Tell me what makes a strong brand.
A strong brand. A strong brand, I think, in today's world, it has to actually be what it claims to be. What values? It comes out of values for me. A brand is about values. So a strong brand has to actually do the things that it says it's all about. So an example is a bad brand is like, we're about, let's say, running, right? But like the CEO doesn't run, team doesn't really run, they're selling a product, they're not really at the races, they're not really friends with runners, they're not really talking the talk or walking the walk. That would be a terrible brand. You could just tell, right? A great brand would be like, everyone runs, everyone loves running, they're obsessed. Like it's hard to book a meeting because they're probably at every race, like that's a great brand. You want to be a part of that. You want that immediately builds community because you want to hang out with those people and be a part of it. And you don't have to use crazy words like, we have a community team. Like, the community is the brand. That's a great brand.
So it's less about saying we do the thing.
Yeah.
And actually doing the specific thing.
And it's being the thing. It's walking the walk and showing up, and it's providing value to people that want to live that lifestyle.
Is that where you think businesses go wrong mostly?
I think so. I think a lot of businesses and brands, they want to build community, but like there's not a clear way to build a community for them, because they're so focused on, and oftentimes by necessity, like you have to build the business. Like someone has to update the product pages and the copy and run the ads and make sure that things are actually working. Like there's a real job here, right? But I think a big part of it is like there's no natural way to build a community because they're not in the conversation. They're not actually leading culture. They're not actually like in the culture. They see what other people are doing and like, oh, I want that influencer who does that thing to like rep my brand, and I want to pay that person to rep me. But that person can't really rep you properly unless like there's a connection there. And you see this with like some of these smaller brands that just crush. Like they find people that are genuinely excited about the product, like the product, love the product, use the product. And it's not really a cash exchange of like, oh, I want to pay this influencer to talk and promote me. It's more like, hey, if you like it, talk about it, and like we'll throw you back some cash. And that seems to like work so much better. And brands just go wrong by like they just try to be cool and market for other marketers. They try to market for the sake of like being in the conversation, but they're not actually doing anything. I'm not gonna say who's doing the worst or the best at it, but there's two athletic brands, like athleisure brands right now. One absolutely dominates because they have created their entire ecosystem around wellness, and they have the right people that actually live this lifestyle of wellness in their ecosystem. And the other brand is throwing money at it, and it just doesn't work. You see it and you're like, you're clearly just blowing money on this.
Walk me through with what you did with Plunge then, because you built an extremely strong community in a very short amount of time.
Yeah.
So for all intents and purposes, Plunge essentially acquired Twin.
Right.
Which was Take What You Need, the cold water therapy company that you had prior to working with Plunge. Mm-hmm. Plunge brings you on as a director of community and experiences. Mm-hmm. Where do you begin starting to, what did you think about when you wanted to say, okay, I'm going to build a community for this brand and we're going to expand into the event space?
Yeah. So there were a few principles that I had coming into it. One of them was like, it needs to be about more than just plunging. So an example of where brands go wrong is brands think their product is the hero, right? This happens all the time. Brands think that people are really excited about their product, and they're not. They're excited about how they feel using the product, right? That's what they're excited about. For me, the biggest thing was, how do people feel? How do you want people to feel? And so I wrote down a list of like, here's the transformation that happens. People come in to a Plunge event and most people are scared. They're like, all they can think about is like, how bad is this going to suck when I get into the cold water? That's literally all they can think about. Like you can do the breath work and talk to them and reason and tell them how good it is, all the benefits. All they can think about is, how bad is this going to suck when I get into this cold water, right? And so my thought process around it is like, how do you create an environment that's so fun, that's so shareable, that is so welcoming that when they get out, they can't stop raving about how they felt afterwards. Not just from the benefits of cold plunging, which is very real, and it's probably most of that, like biochemically is most of that, but the connection piece is huge too. And so for me, it's like, how do you create an experience where people feel genuinely welcomed? There's a workout group in LA that I used to go to their workouts. And one thing that I would notice is sometimes it was really cold. You would come in and it would be like, you're clearly the new person who doesn't know people. And I kind of despise that feeling. I love the feeling of like, you walk in, you've never met anyone, and everyone's like, yo, what's up? Who are you? Why are you here? Like, welcome. This is awesome. Do you want to meet people? Like, that's such a good feeling. And so I really wanted to embody that. And I tried it in all of my experiences. I tried to make it new and novel. So there's always a novelty piece of it of like, wow, I've never tried this product before. I've never met this person before. I've never done this thing before. And in that, there's discovery. People are able to be in the present moment of discovery. And that is a really powerful feeling. And then it also sort of propagates this energy where people want to share and want to connect because everyone's feeling like in this, discovery, this moment of discovery. And they're like, they're open. I want to connect to you. I want to talk to you. I want to be your friend on Instagram. I want to take a photo with you or do the thing, take the plunge, change my life. So
do you think that's a skill that people can learn or people have it or they don't?
To create these experiences?
Yes.
Oh, it's definitely something you can learn for sure. I think it's a state of awareness. It's like understanding what's happening in the environment that you're creating. Are you creating? A lot of people try to control their environment so much and say like, this is how things work. And then you have a very predictable outcome, but it doesn't, no magic ever happens, you know? And it's kind of like,
Expand on the branding piece for me a little bit there, because what you're doing is you're taking something that could be perceived as a hard thing or a big lift, but you're aligning that with a community that wants to better themselves.
Totally.
How did you, when you viewed that standpoint, did you say, okay, I know this is going to be challenging, but if the environment makes them feel big enough, great enough, empowered enough on the back end, we don't have to worry about the front end piece because it's how they felt at the end? Or was that something that was taken into account at the beginning?
Yeah. So my principle on this all along, and mind you, I discovered this, right? So this was through me doing lots of events for myself and then discovering that this was working. And then Plunge gave me the ability to like go big with this. The amount of trust they gave me and the ability, I wouldn't have been able to do what I did without Plunge. Like Plunge is like the reason why I'm able to really lean into this. But my belief was like, people don't necessarily want to do a workshop. They don't want to come in and just like sit there and be told what to do. People want to be empowered to like have their own experience. And like, you're going to have a range of experiences. Some people are going to have a lot of fear or anxiety going into this. Some people are going to, come out of this being like, wow, I feel really empowered. I feel like I did it, I accomplished. Other people are just going to feel good. And so what I wanted to do was really just lean into fun. Like, how do you make this a fun experience? Doing the hard thing is fun. And it's fun because you meet other people and we're all sort of equalized in the space. Like you can be a fund manager, an investor. You can be a private chef. You can be a fitness trainer. You can be a coach. You can be someone who works at a coffee shop. You're all being equalized because you're doing this hard thing together. And that to me is like a really magical place.
Kind of the philosophy behind the run, recover, record too. Go into the suck together.
Yeah.
Come out the other side.
Right.
Connect on it. And then you're now on a similar playing field. Like one's not above the other. That's
where the magic happens. Is like when you're in it together. That's communion, right? Yeah. Like community. It's you're in community. You're in the boat together.
What would you say is a commonly accepted piece of branding advice that is actually false?
Ooh, a commonly accepted piece of branding advice that's actually false. Oh, I don't know if I can define that. It's a good question. Branding advice that's false. I think a lot of people think that branding is about saying something, right? This is what it is. Branding, people say that branding is about saying something. Branding is about doing something. So how you show up in your community is what you do, and you will build your brand. And I'm proof of that. So it was the volume of events that I did. I did so much volume. And by volume, we become a community partner because the community wants you there because they want this experience. It's one thing to say that you serve people or that you do something or that you provide some benefit. It's another thing to actually show up and be there for people in a time of need. So I would say, not a direct answer, but here's what it really is. A great brand provides for their customers during their time of need. That's the best way to brand.
Makes me think of Phil Knight, Shoe Dog, built Nike. And I remember when I read that, they talked about what how he defined what the branding of Nike was.
I know you're going with this.
And
the running in the rain. Yeah.
And so people talked about like, oh, the apparel that they had, the shoes that they had, they make the best product. But if you break it down, Nike doesn't make the best product. If you're actually looking at running shoes for performance.
Yeah.
And he was asked, he goes, what makes Nike a great brand? And he goes, we're not the best at creating anything, but we're the person that's going to be standing under the lamppost when it's pouring rain and you wake up and you still go run.
Right.
And we're going to be standing alongside you, cheering you on, and you're going to be at this even playing field with us and us with you.
Totally. Yeah.
Fascinating when you look at branding through the lens of let us meet you where you're at and support you in this challenging endeavor, because now we're going to be able to collaborate together and partner together to get you to where you want to go.
Totally. The customer is the hero. The product is enabling that hero to, accomplish their mission.
In line with the branding and in line with community, which we've spoken quite a bit about today, shifting from, we can take me or you as an example, you're shifting from drinking to not drinking, you lose a community and then you start to find a new community. What would you say to someone who hasn't yet found their community and they're aligning with who they want to become, but they don't know where to look?
Yes. The best way to have friends is to be the friend that you wish you had. So invite people to do the things that you want to do. And you're going to get a lot of no's. Like, invite people to do weird stuff. Like, you want to play Frisbee in the park and like, you don't know anybody that plays Frisbee. Like, start asking people, hey, you play Frisbee? No, I don't. And like, eventually someone's gonna be like, yo, I love playing Frisbee. And like, all right, now you have your Frisbee friend. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It sounds so easy, but it's hard to ask lots of people to do the thing that you want to do. And then eventually you're going to find people that love that thing. And then you're going to have community because you have this shared interest. So invite people to do the things that you want to do. And you're going to get a lot of no's, have low expectations, and eventually you're going to find your group.
It's leaning into being authentically yourself.
Totally. And so it's showing up.
Yeah. And when you show up as who you are, the people that are meant to be in your life that are also interested in the same thing will be attracted to you.
And it'll be, when you're really pure about it and you're really true about like doing the thing that you're interested in, it will blow you away the quality of people that come into your life. Because where we have where I believe is where we have dissatisfaction in our relationships are the people that are willing to do it for the friendship, not because of the interest. Like, there was so as I was pivoting out of drinking and like my whole friend group, and I'm still friends with, there's people from my previous life that I'm so very close with that I love dearly. But we don't spend much time together. Like, we don't, and I love them, and the relationships change over time. We grow. But one thing that happened for me was I noticed I had a lot of friends that would do things because they cared about our friendship and they cared about me as a friend, but they weren't interested in doing that thing. Surfing, it was longboarding, it was whatever the thing was, right? Hiking, I don't care. They would do it with me if I like convinced them to do it. And I never really loved the feeling of like convincing my friends to do the thing. I had other friends though that like were obsessed with that thing, and I would just meet them there, and it was so easy because it was like they're going with or without me. And one of my best friends, Dr. John Hickey, he has this thing that he shared with me. It's the C's in your life. It's the coaches, the comrades, the companions, the casuals, and the cares, and then the chronics. And so the idea is like the coaches and the comrades are the people that are cheering you on. They're doing it, right? The comrades they're climbing the mountain with or without you, but you look over and they're next to you, right? And if you stop climbing the mountain, they're still climbing the mountain, but you have that comrade in that pursuit. And then there's, the casuals, right? And those are the people that you work with. Maybe it's your cousin or whoever, right? It's like the people in your life, you bump into them, but like they're not in on the mission, right? And most of our friendships are probably even lower than the casual. They're probably chronics. Like, they're in your life. They've been in your life for a long time. Like, you care about them, but like they're not on a mission at all. You're going to feel the most satisfaction, fulfillment when you have a comrade and you're like, we're doing this thing. Like, that moment, that feeling when you and a friend are like on a mission, whether it's a road trip or a night out or whatever, right? Whatever stage of life you're in, you're on a run, and it's like, you're both so locked in. That feeling is electric. And if you can just remove the expectation that people are going to want to do the thing that you want to do and just show up and do the thing you want to do and find friends in the process, then you're going to have so much satisfaction.
That's brilliant. I've never heard that. I've never heard John say that either. And that's
it's
incredible.
Great. Yeah, it's great. When he told me that, I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. And I could easily go through like a list of my friends and be like, okay, these are cares, these are chronics, like these are casuals, and like these are comrades. And it was like, and then obviously I know who the coaches are too. And it was like, oh, I'm locked in.
In reference to everything that we've spoken about today, but specifically double clicking on quality of life, what input has provided the largest return for you in your life?
Largest return. I mean, I would have to say cold exposure is the number one for me. And the reason why is it took me from a crutch where I really wanted to tap out and no longer be alive. And it was like, it gave me this belief like, okay, I can get through the day. Like I did the hard thing. Like I can get through today. Right. And that eventually turned into a performance cue where it's like cold water hits the face and you're like, oh, let's go. I'm beast mode activated. That's my story for me. But there's a couple other inputs that are really huge. I think one of those is stillness, like taking time to not have stimuli come in. You know, that stillness could be for a hike or it could be longboarding. For me, it was actually longboarding. You know, I would skate from El Segundo down to Hermosa like 4 days a week. And it was basically an hour and a half of me just longboarding. And that experience, doing that over and over again, watching the sunset would just like, it would just level me out. That changed my life too. So there's been a few.
Beauty. Well, Dom, this has been an incredible pleasure to have you on today.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. It's my pleasure. And to go deeper, learn a little bit more about your story. And I think as a way to summarize the day and to summarize the discussion, really doing the hard thing when you don't want to do it because you know it's going to be better for you or it's going to improve you and direct you towards who you want to become, creating space in your life for the things that you don't know are coming. But if you continually push and grind, you never actually take a step back to see, like, is this something A, that I actually want? Mm-hmm. And B, I can't get this thing if I don't allow myself to open up and receive it, being number two. And then number three is there's a hell of a lot of inputs you shared with us today. But if we come down to one, I think the cold water and getting into an environment where you need to be able to regulate yourself and learning through doing is part of that process too.
Yeah. And I would love just to, one more thing on that is, what does urgency feel like in the body? Like figure that out. What does it feel like when you're about, like I remember going to a run club, you're the one that invited me to run club, you know, and I wasn't going to do it because I was very anti-running. I was like, I don't run, dude. And you invited me and I finally went because of you. And that feeling when you walk up and you're like, there's 300 people here and I'm not a runner. Oh, the urgency, you know, like, oh my gosh, what does that feel like in your body? What do? Do you turn around and say, no, I'm going back to the car? Or do you say, okay, I'm going to run for the first time, I'm going to run with a group like this. And that was a life-changing moment for me. You know, it was like, oh, I like this. This is sick. Now I'm a runner, you know, like, so what does urgency feel like in the body? Learn that, get used to it. It's your friend. It's talking to you. It'll change your life.